Welcome to the channel, everyone. I'm Teresa. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for clicking on the video. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back, of course, soul family. And happy solstice to everyone, whether you're watching this on the day. I'm actually recording it on the solstice, or if you come along and catch it later, it doesn't matter. We're going to be in those solstice energies for a few days. I knew I wanted to record something on the solstice. It's like I've been kind of limping along for the last week or so. And again, I do thank you for your patience. But I am happy to say I haven't gone into the pure water fast yet. I'm ramping down into it. I'm basically doing one meal. And when I say one meal a day, it's not like within a 4 hour window. It's genuinely like one meal, like a bowl of something very simple, beans and rice, and then a protein smoothie, and consuming that within like a 2 hour time period. And then that's it for the 24 hours. And I am happy to say that I am down 18 pounds since the evening of the 15th. So, yeah, which it kind of speaks loudly to what I was saying about how I was in a critical situation with the inflammation, because that's not normal. Even with regular fasting, normally you'll lose 1.5 to 2 pounds depending on where you're at. Um, but losing on average 3 pounds a day, that shows you that my inflammation markers are extremely high right now, which is kind of why I haven't been feeling so well. But like I say, I'm doing what I need to do. So I'm getting back on track with that. And the reason I'm commenting on that is, well, if you're experiencing some stuff that feels a little unusual to you, as I was kind of looking at some things and taking some notes and trying to figure out where we were going in today's conversation, I ran across a channel that I'm subscribed to. I don't watch her very often, but she had um, put a short reel up that came up in my feed, so I stopped to check it out. It's Sarah Ariana, and she pays attention to the Schumann frequency a lot, which I can tell it acts up. I can kind of sort of hear it because I've got this crazy buzzing that, like I said, a doctor would want to call it tinnitus, but the way it's been happening and the way it changes, I know it has something to do with my ascension cycles, because it started like in 2017, 18, and it kind of ramped down for a little bit. And then since 2020, it's just really been doing its thing. However, for a while I was watching the Schumann frequencies as well. And if you're not familiar, the Schumann frequency is kind of like the Earth's heartbeat. Normally, the Schumann frequency, when they first started measuring it for the last 75, 80 years, it's been, I think, 8.3 hertz. Very low grade, but that's what the frequency of the Earth typically is when it's considered normal. Now in 2020, it started spiking up, and they were seeing, like, during the early part of the pandemic months, like January, February, March, they were seeing spikes as high as 37. But for a consistent block of time, it was spiking consistently every day, hitting around 20 hertz. That's a huge gap between 8.3, and then all of a sudden it's holding around 20 hertz. But y'all, I've been talking about feeling different and these frequencies and the things that are happening, and the headaches and the dizziness and the ascension symptoms and all of those things. If you're struggling with that right now, please be aware that there's a reason for it. Please consider your fasting, your salt baths, upping your water intake. She was mentioning today on the solstice, the Schumann frequency reached 52 hertz. Like, remember when they talked about something that happened and they hit they claimed that the moon rather, was struck and it was ringing like a bell at 52 hertz. I'm surprised we don't hear it. Probably animals do. I don't know, but yeah, and some people probably are tapping in on kind of starting to hear the frequency of the Earth's heartbeat. But 52 hertz is a way high difference between 8.3. So there's a lot that's going on. Our changes there. And as we go through the solstice, that kind of lends itself to what I wanted to talk about today. Yesterday, well, I wound up not recording because I wasn't feeling so hot and I went and laid down. But the last couple of days, the subject of love has been on my mind. It's been showing up in a lot of our readings. And typically, we think of romantic love. That's what typically is romantic love. Romantic love and familial love are what send us to the tarot readings, trying to figure out how to sort that stuff out, period. Love and money is pretty much what everybody needs an answer to as we are working through our stuff along our awakening and ascension journey. But it's so funny because there's a phrase that came to mind, and I have to think about my children's grandfather, the late Frederick Steele. He used to say, "Love ain't nothing but a misunderstanding between two fools." Now, please don't get offended because if you think about it though, if you'll be accountable to yourself, all of us have gone through those relationships where we're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? You think about it and you kind of get this soul cringe. I should have ended it sooner. I never should have been in it to start with. I should have seen that nonsense. They really wasn't worth me making a big ass of myself as I did, trying to hold on to a big bunch of nothing. And then I had to let it go anyway, or most of the time, they don't even value your worth and they wind up leaving anyway. Now that's the biggest blessing you could get, is when a big bunch of nothing undervalues you and leaves you anyway. It hurts like hell in the beginning. That's the biggest favor they could do you. But we don't see it. So like I say, a miscommunication, a misunderstanding between two fools, because you ain't had no business being in it to start with. Except for the fact, and this is what I kind of wanted to get to on the subject of love, because it's not just about our romantic relationships, it's with all of our relationships. As we ascend, the best way, I believe one of the fastest ways to ascension, is to understand, just like everything else with the law of attraction, people say it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. We got to start understanding that about our relationships too. And I honestly feel like all of us need to step back a little bit and re-examine what we know, what we think we know, and what we've been programmed to feel or understand or believe about love. Because honestly, that's the key. And I believe because we're at this critical juncture, like I said, I was feeling it from the 19th moving into all of this stuff. But at the 21st, this is the summer solstice. And everybody that I know that's like super tapped into astrology is saying between now and Lionsgate, the energies are going to be intense, but there's a lot of transformation that is happening for us. And I know it's not easy because, again, I've been at this for years now, and I'm struggling with it. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get on here and kind of love you up a little bit and give you a little bit of encouragement, because I know it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy because it's kind of like final exams before graduation, or the term paper, a term assignment being due before graduation. A lot of those issues that we've had to deal with are definitely spinning the block, whether it's physically exes and difficult family members and all of those coming back into your face, or you're sitting back and those things are coming to mind in meditation and in your introspective moments. It don't matter either way. It's about you having to go through those. But if we can stop and look at what we're getting out of it, I think it's going to take us to something new and improved. I think we're being called into, especially the chosen ones, in order to get through this next season, we're being called to cultivate or find in ourselves, if you will, what I want to call a superhero evolved level of love, because honestly, that's what it's going to take. I remember back in 2016, 17, one of the first really profound things that helped me start calming down as I started kind of hunkering into my hermit mode healing season, if you will, is the difference between reacting to things and responding. If we can master that and learn to respond as opposed to reacting, it will catapult us light years ahead of most of the world and in our own healing journeys. I spent a lot of my life reacting to things. And I mean, when you're, and again, I'm not criticizing. I had to acknowledge it in myself. I'm speaking on it now so that somebody can, like I said, if I'm willing to hold the mirror up to myself, maybe you can see some of it in you without feeling like I'm placing blame, because I honestly don't think that it's a blame-worthy thing. I think it's just something everyone needs to be aware of, especially those of us who are coming through difficult cycles that took us through poverty consciousness and victim mentality and uh, being on the wrong end of codependent. Well, honestly, there's no right end of codependency, but whether you're the giver or the taker, being in codependent cycles sucks. Those, all of those type things, but it leaves you in a very raw reactive type scenario where you're starting to operate from survival mode. And genuinely, all of those things throw you into, for real, trauma response survival mode. And we spend a lot of time reacting to life instead of taking time to step back just a little bit and being able to put that time buffer in between us to be able to respond. But once you see it, and you don't perfect it overnight, but you just continue to do that a little and a little and a little, and it gets better. And then one of the things that you really start getting to is where you start working on the idea of forgiveness and unconditional love. Now, it's interesting when I started thinking about love, like I said, the first thing I heard was a misunderstanding between two fools. I love Freddie, RIP, you know, rest in power, King. Um, But then I was hearing this, and I don't even know why, because I haven't heard the song in forever. But "Weak" by SWV, now that's the romantic love that everybody's thinking of. And that's the better part of the misunderstanding between two fools. Because even in that song, it's saying, I get so weak in the knees, I can hardly speak, I lose all control. Your love, it makes me weak. And, I don't know, it got me acting so crazy. And I'm like, it sounds good. Like you said, we make songs and bebop to it, and truthfully, that infatuation, heartbeat, fluttery kind of thing. But that's not really, well, it's a form of love, but that's not the one that's going to carry us all the way through. I don't care how much you love that person. Eros will never take you the distance on the whole love ride. And that was one of the things I wanted to go back and look just to make sure, because I know, especially if you've done Sunday school, they talk about the different types of love. Of course, like I said, Eros is the one that we write songs about and wind up fighting wars over. And they ultimately lead us to the tarot readings to try to seek healing for and all of that. That's the romantic love. But there's also several types of love. They talk about philia, affectionate or friendship type love. That's why Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, because it's that kind of thing. But truthfully, brotherly love, like, well, they're saying brotherly as in friendship. When we really look at familial love, that's storge, which is like love for your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, your cousins, whatever. That feeling of it's almost like an obligatory love. And then, of course, everybody talks about agape, which is that very much that's what we call brotherly love, or that selfless giving type of love. And then there's Ludus. I actually love Ludus because that's that playful, first early stages of dating type love, or the, puppies playing, horse playing with your best friends, that kind of thing. There's no serious commitment to that though, so you have to kind of pair Ludus with something else in order to be, ultimately, for it to stick, if you will. But the one nobody really talks about is pragma. And that's an enduring type of love. And I honestly feel like pragma is kind of sort of where we have to get to understand unconditional love, because it's easy to say unconditional love, very, very hard to do. And truthfully, as humans, I don't think we're going to ever completely master unconditional love, because even look at Yeshua. I think him and Buddha came as close to unconditional love as anyone can, but even he got pissed off enough to braid a whip and run him up out the temple. So there's a time and a space. You're never going to perfect it and stay in it 100% 24/7, but the main thing is to tip the balance. And the reason I'm speaking on it now, and the reason I feel like it's important now, kind of goes back to what I was talking about in earlier videos about the revolution not being televised. We're receiving so many downloads and upgrades. Our energy output, if you will, I believe is going to ramp up tremendously. I woke up this morning, like I said, I've been hurting so bad till I literally can barely walk some days. And if I sit still too long, I'm still getting stiff knees, killing me. But I actually woke up with relief. They're still uncomfortable, but feeling way better than I have in weeks today. So I know that the further I get into allowing these changes, these downloads and upgrades, and doing the self-care and those kinds of things, that there are things that are coming in that are going to allow my frequency to rise. And as my frequency rises, that means your output rises too. And that's the time when I believe we're going to really be able to start seeing greater manifestational power. Being able to use, of course, with discretion and using it properly, but being able to use our power of mind to manifest, or I don't want to say manipulate in the sense that the world talks about it, because truthfully, as a person on the path of ascension, an ascending master, so to speak, yes, it is about manipulating the dimension, if you will, our surroundings, the energy, but you're doing it with responsibility for your greatest good and the greatest good of others. Never, ever, ever using it to harm another person or anything like that. You're literally doing it to create the world you wish to see. Because we see the world going literally to hell in a handbasket all the way, all around us. We're in a dumpster fire right now. If you look at the news in the world and the things around you, that's what they would have you believe. Because here's the thing, and let me back up a little bit. I'm gonna go a little bit conspiracist on you. I was talking about this with my roommate the other day. If you get a chance, I don't know what you can still find about it online, but years ago they had a project, and I think it was partly declassified enough that we hear about it. You were able to get some information, not a whole lot, but they had a project called Looking Glass back through the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know when or if, probably not if. I think at some point they did kind of shut Looking Glass down though, and the reason they did is because no matter what they did, Looking Glass, let me back up a little bit more. Looking Glass was apparently, and again, we don't get any solid answers, but enough stuff leaked out that I kind of sort of believe it. Looking Glass was some kind of off-world technology that they found out there in wherever it is that they be looking and doing all their digging that they've been doing for the last 200-300 years. But they found this device, and apparently what it did was show like timelines. It shows what would happen in future timelines, almost like something you could look at like watching a movie almost. Now again, they would never show us that on the news, because who's going to believe it? But those who don't doubt everything and understand that whatever they show us, they got 10 times more than that behind the scenes that they're not showing, don't have a hard time believing that Looking Glass could be real. But what happened with Looking Glass Once they started seeing future timelines, you already know the powers that don't really have our good interests at heart start trying to manipulate the timelines. That's one of the reasons we have so many Mandela effects right now, partly some of the timeline and dimensional shifts as we go through this part of the universe with the planetary alignments and coming into the changing of the zodiacal ages and all of that. Some of those timeline shifts would have been happening anyway, but some of those really crazy Mandela effects that we have are most likely, allegedly, because of the way they were attempting to tweak the timelines through Looking Glass. But no matter what they did and how they tried to get the upper hand, they started seeing that towards the end, it was almost like no matter how they changed it, that the timelines would kind of course correct and still end up with light winning. And it made them so aggravated that they thought it was something wrong with the computer program. They brought in some big super intelligent mathematician to come in and check the math and all of that, and he was like, no. He checked it. He was like, no, it checks out everything. You're seeing what you think you're seeing, no matter what they tried to do, no matter how rough they ruffled the waters on the front end. Eventually the course correction will cause light to win. But that's where we come in, chosen, because as we begin to awaken and ascend, we become exponentially more powerful with our vibration, with our energy, with our mind power, with our second brain power, our heart and mind. When we get that heart brain coherence together and actually learn how to manifest and become alchemists, we'll start shifting these dimensions. We'll literally be surfing dimensions and create new earth on the fly right here in front of us. Mass consciousness is driving up. Like I said, for the last 2,000 years, they've been marching us toward Armageddon. You think that that's because that's inevitable because the Bible says so? No, it's not. It's inevitable because what we think and believe is what happens. And so they keep telling us, they keep spoon feeding us certain things until it gets hardwired in our programming. And the more we believe it, the more we become it. And that's why I said the revolution will not be televised. We have the choice to become disruptive in our thinking, but not disruptive as in evil. We can disrupt the evil by changing our thoughts. And the first step to that is understanding and beginning to work in meditation with concepts of forgiveness and unconditional love. Hey y'all, I know it ain't easy, especially when people done did some real shit to you and you just been dogged out, done bad, as the cowboys say, rode hard and put up wet. I get that part. But one of the things as an ascending master that I want you to stop and consider as we go into this solstice thing, understand that our concepts of good and evil, that was fed to us as well. If you understood that evil, as we look at it now, is only a byproduct or a pushing off point, it's a collateral consequence of creation, then you would understand that evil is simply a choice. It doesn't have to exist with any real significance. Yes, there will always be people that make the wrong choices, but the more people that make a more positive choice, the less effective those that make a poor choice can be. Humanity is suffering right now because we just went along with the status quo and accepted a lot of poor choices. But the more informed we become, we can make better choices. And when I say the pushing off point, if you think about, though, again, I don't presume to be God, but I do understand that according to the physical laws and the universal laws of this dimension that Earth is encapsulated in, one of the big ones there is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, If God said, let there be light, what is the opposite? Darkness. It's just a pushing off point. When the one separated itself into two halves, there's a pushing off point. So if you think about good and evil, if good is going to spring forth, then so would evil. But just like most of the energy on this planet forms a toroidal field of sorts. So eventually, as good expands, evil might expand, but it will fall off too, and they'll both reuptake. And you do not have to continue to lend your attention or energy to the evil. And if you don't lend your energy to it, it will fizzle out. What you lend your energy and attention to expands exponentially faster than what you ignore. The difference is to get enough powerful ascending beings to turn their attention away from all that stuff, to understand they don't have to be plugged into the news 24/7. They don't have to be plugged into the violence on television and the media garbage and any of the rest of that stuff. They can turn their attention towards understanding that even the things that we see that are absolutely unacceptable and absolutely unconscionable are done by people who have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, and or programmed into making poor choices. That phrase, hurt people hurt people. Oh, that's so true. And the best way to learn forgiveness is to understand that even though we may have been hurt a lot, as we were hurt, we also, intentionally or not, and 9 times out of 10, especially if you're on this channel 99.999% of the time in your journey up to this point, it was unintentional, but as you have been hurt, you have hurt others too. Every single one of us has done something that we will hope and pray there's somebody that don't ever get really, really brought to the light, or we don't really have to address it again, or we want to go back and somewhere down the line we've either had to go and apologize for something or wish we had the opportunity to do something differently or apologize for it. Everybody. So I'm not saying it is a blame game, but if we can understand that about ourselves, it allows for us to have grace towards the people that do some of those other things too, even the really painful things, even the things that are so unconscionable that people have to be incarcerated or taken up off of this planet for, because they're so heavily programmed to believe that those behaviors are okay, and they're just really not. But we still, how we feel, we have to learn to despise the action, not the person, because we are gods, all of us, even the ones that don't know it, even the ones that act bad. But we can do more to affect change in those persons by understanding that and shifting our thinking and our vibration and our energy and our response instead of a reaction. You hear they say, "Oh, I can't stand them and I hate them and them this and that," and before we know it, we've ramped up into that mob mentality just hearing about some of those things, because really is triggering. Some of the things we hear about on the news that people do to each other is absolutely horrifying. But if you can learn to respond and get it, one, the creator of all doesn't instantly step in and stop that, because all his children have to learn and all his children have to make choices. And it will be cleaned up and it will be stopped. But if the creator of all has not chosen to instantly stop it, then guess what? The best thing we can do to benefit that is to work at it from a vibrational standpoint as a true alchemist, not necessarily lending our voices to the protests and the marches and the violent retaliations and the blah, 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 blah. It's enough people doing that, and that ain't worked in for since ever. It's been a war somewhere on this planet ever since we could think of. That doesn't work. So as ascending beings, we have to understand the better way to fight any of that stuff is to fight it with our energy and our consciousness, manifest from a place of where you want the world to be. And the more you do that, you'll begin to see the world you want gelling up around you. You'll come to understand that most people are decent. For example, I know every one of us, if you've gotten stuck in the short reels, we see these Karen videos about how ridiculous people act out in the wild. You know, I've never run into that anywhere in the street. I have never, ever seen a Karen in the wild, nowhere. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm in Atlanta, y'all. And I see clips from some crazy ish happening in Atlanta. But it doesn't find its way to me when I mean, I don't go out that much anymore, but even when I did, typically when I go out in public, I had weird things like native New Yorkers coming up and starting conversations with me. What? New Yorkers don't stop and talk to each other in the store. Not typically, but they do to me. I have people sit, like I said, stop and just chit chat, ask for help, walk around, have a conversation, pleasant this, opportunities to help people. Those are because that's where my energy and my headspace is at. I don't really have them kind of crazy people coming up to me doing crazy stuff. And I'm not saying that the people that do encounter Karens in the wild or there's any that they're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying the more chill and regulated your frequency becomes, the different type of world you begin to see. And of course, I got to work on mine too, because got to get my money situation together. But again, even me saying that, I understand that's a point that I have to work on because the opportunities are there if we can learn to see them and allow spirit to show, like I said, allow spirit to show it to us and understand what they're trying to show us and move into it. But in any event, that was just something like I said, I wanted to talk about love today because I really believe that that is key. Forgiveness and unconditional love are really, really going to be important for us in this next phase in order for us to develop those superpowers that it's going to take. Like I said, we got that superhero love because it's going to take a superhero love to do the moving and shaking that we need to do to see the world that we want to see begin to take place, to have the relationships that we want to have come to us, even the ones as far as healing certain relationships. Now there's a lot of them that we've let go of that they just gone. And look, I would say don't look for any of them to come back. Some of them will, because some of those people, by you doing what you need to do and cutting some of those people and experiences out of your life, some of them may actually begin to heal and eventually come back to you. And if they do, that's a beautiful thing, but don't look for that. You worry about doing the healing, change, shifting your worldview from you within, and those can still rock what you will, and those that can't. And again, that's not a bad thing either. We want to see everything as good or bad. It's not a bad thing. It's simply, and it is just a consequence or a reality of the dimensional shift that we're experiencing. Some people will come along sooner, some later, some not at all. And we can't blame them for it. We can't be angry with them for it. We just have to do what we have to do, and they do what they have to do. But the best way, the only way most of us will be able to affect those things and those people is by taking it to these spiritual streets, to the ethereal. That's it's honestly way more effective than anything that you're going to be able to do. You can't push it into place. Like I said, if you could have, you would have already. So why not? Let's just give it a try. Especially since, like I said, we got these crazy energy fluxes happening right now. Some real stuff is happening, y'all. So we might as well rock out with it. That's what we're called to do. Anyway, I'm not gonna keep going on with this. I had taken some notes here. I just want to look. I had written down some notes because like I said, that, oh, one of the other things that I had seen after I heard the song Weak by SWV, I kind of slept on that today. And when I got up today, it had shifted. And instead of hearing SWV, I was hearing Where is the Love by Black Eyed Peas. And honestly, that song is kind of heavy too when you think about it, but it also gives us more of a look at the power that we have to move and change some things. Um, I want to read this because I'm not even sure. Like I said, I start scribbling stuff down. I went someplace a little bit different, but yeah, it says, if love, I wrote down my notes that if love makes you weak, it's not love. It's a misunderstanding between two fools. We get misled and scramble our love, but at the end of the day, what regardless of what they say, we're not supposed to love others more than or at the expense of ourselves. When we do, we're not being true to ourselves or the other person. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the relationship between like loving parents and dependent offspring. That is truthfully the closest we ever, like I said, the most organic closeness we'll have to unconditional love is the love between a loving parent. Now I get it, some folks are so traumatized that maternal instinct doesn't kick in, their paternal instinct doesn't kick in, but I'm saying for most people, once they have a child, that initial bond when they're young, that's the closest we will understand of unconditional love until we start working at it on an ascension path. And even that does not remain. It's not supposed to. There are a lot of folks that take an advantage of the fact that they claim that, like I said, the broken society that we live in try to guilt people into believing that the love between parents and children are supposed to remain unconditional throughout all time. No, it's not. When that child gets old enough to make their own decisions and their own choices, it's just like in the wild. There comes a point where the mama eagle will literally blow the feathers out the nest, and if they still won't leave, she will push them off the hill. Now she's going to fly down and catch them until they can learn to fly, but they can't stay up under her wing forever. Eventually, the sheep or the dog or the cat or whomever, the nursing mother, will eventually nip at those babies and push them away. They eventually have to stand on their own. And the same thing with humans. We love our children, but there comes a point in time where that love is no longer an unconditional contract. Yes, you're always going to love them, but if they show their ass, they got to go. You can't you can't love anyone, including your children, more than you love yourself. And when you get to a point where you allow someone who has been coddled by this world or misled by whatever or not parented by you to a point that they're starting to take unfair advantage and hurt you and your experience, when they've gotten to past the child stage into adulthood, and they're still trying to hold on to that familial bond to guilt trip you and gaslight you into believing that you didn't know, you don't. That's an imbalanced love at that point, because they're not loving you unconditionally if they're saying that you got to continue to allow them to misuse you and mistreat you in order for you to prove your love to them. That's gaslighting. We don't do that. But what else did I say? Oh, and I was talking. Oh, yeah, the other love that was mentioned was mania, and I was saying whenever we take on that whole all-encompassing, got to tolerate it no matter what, that becomes into mania. That's an obsessive type of love, and we don't want to go there. That it no. Now, yeah, I said all healthy love becomes somewhat conditional once the object of that love is no longer our minor child that we're responsible for. Yeah. But again, I think truthfully, if we really, really understand love and limits, because love is not about being all permissive, love does require discipline, love requires accountability and correction And if we're actually loving our children, I know we love them as best we can. And a lot of times I think the divide between people as they get older is because parents are raising children through their own trauma. Most of the time, most people that start having kids, especially in this era of promiscuity and single parenthood and damaged relationships and all of these cycles that we've been coming out of or trying to come out of now, but there was a whole generation of a whole lot of people that birthed children from a complete state of trauma. So it's very difficult for those people to turn around later and back out of that because they were raising, and again, you have to remember, like I said, hurt people hurt people. So you can go back and apologize for it, but that doesn't mean you have to continue to put up with that forever, even if you were the mistake that caused it. If they're not willing to correct it once they're old enough to see the difference and make a choice, eventually you got to let some things go. But once you do that, and sit with that seriously in meditation, ask your guides to teach you about forgiveness and unconditional love. Now, it's going to take you through a lot of painful things that you had to deal with in your lifetime, and some of that stuff may spin the block right back in your face for you to look at it again. But if you can master those lessons and get that superhero level up on the love thing, I think it's going to serve you well in this next season. It's going to shift your frequency to where the love that you generate from this heart-brain coherence, once you learn that part as well, and make you a master manifester. Yeah. Any event, that's my time here today. I do appreciate you joining me. I am going to get we're going to finish up the Emerald Tablets of Thoth here shortly, and I'm going to get a couple of readings out for the family for Solstice, kind of take a look at the energies there. So I definitely invite you to join me for that. And until those videos go up, and until next time, family, peace and blessings to you. I love you so much. Namaste.